Good morning. We're going to start in about 30 seconds.
Buenos días, comenzaremos en más o menos 3 segundos.
So good morning. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the October 20th, 2023 SANDAG Transportation Committee meeting. And I'll call the meeting to order. And before I go forward, I'd like to ask our interpreter how to access the interpretation. So Giovanna, could you please go ahead?
Yes, good morning. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through a Zoom mobile app, such as cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish in the low background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen los controles. Clic en el icono de interpretación en el globo terráqueo, seleccione español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en un celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, por favor pedir auriculares con la recepcionista del vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our clerk, Ms. Francesca Webb, to confirm that we have a quorum with a roll call of those in attendance.
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Rafael Perez.
Here.
The City of San Diego is absent. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson.
Here.
For East County, Chair Shu.
Here.
And Councilmember Mendoza. For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Moreno. Present. For North County Coastal, Mayor Kranz.
Here.
North County Inland is absent. For North County Transit District, Mayor Pro Tem Bob Patel.
Here.
For the Port of San Diego, Chairman Castellanos.
Here.
For South County, Councilmember Duncan.
Present.
For Caltrans, Gustavo Delarda.
Here.
And for the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, Chairwoman Pinto.
Here.
And for the transit agencies, Sharon Cooney is present for MTS and Chris Orlando is present for NCTD. That completes the roll call, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Francesca. As we go into public comments and other opportunities for the public to participate, I'm going to continue and be consistent with 2 minutes for public comments, both in general and later as we get to items on the agenda. So Francesca, we'll take public comments for now. So Francesca, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the folks in the room. Tim Bilash, if you'd like to step up to the podium, and then I'll go over to Zoom and start with Blair Beekman.
Good morning, Transportation Committee. My name is Dr. Timothy Bilash. I am an OBGYN physician for 36 years, but I'm also a scientist. And this morning I will speaking mostly about science. De Tocqueville, in evaluating the United States as a historian, I believe once said, the American people do the right thing after they've done every single wrong thing. And I think transportation is a good example of that from what I've seen in the last 3 years. I'm wearing the trizub trident of the Ukrainian democracy. And another democracy in Israel was under attack. And there are different groups and ascribing blame, but citizens of democracies seem to be under attack. And so I have to mention that because I'm a strong supporter of the democratic principles. I'd like to talk this morning about tire wear. About 2 years ago, I think it was, the chair brought to my attention in one of these committee meetings about the role of particle matter and the small stuff that hasn't been studied, 2.5 micron and below. And we don't have the studies for everything, but we know partially from asthma as far as what I've looked into. But the thing we're not thinking about is, a couple of months ago, I had to put new tires on my car. Where do you think that rubber goes? It goes into very small particles, and particles we don't measure right now. And what I've become aware of is the idea of aerosols. So we have different names for things, and we say we don't have to look at this and only look at that. And these aerosols go up into the air in small particle sizes, and they combine with CHG, which are probably a surrogate for the damage that it does to our health, but also to the climate as nucleating particles. So I wanted to bring that up. We have a cancer cluster near I-5, near my house. No public official has been interested. I think it's partially related to the tire wear. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, followed by the original draw. Blair, you can go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you. Thank you for allowing 2 minutes public comment today. Can San Diego City government and everyday community in the next few weeks work together to help make clear at this time? It seems the current 85-page ubiquitous document that is a part of the October 6th public safety meeting agenda packet is only a summary of a more full ubiquitous contract, and it is not the full ubiquitous contract itself. Can we also help make clear at this time that as part of good standard regular community practices, the everyday public should be allowed an ample fair amount of time to open public review and questioning before a government document and this ubiquitous contract is officially signed. It is my feeling there has been an initial small, more internal review and preparation of the Smart Streetlight contract in the early fall. This could now be a time we can move into a more open public process of both an ample public review time of the full ubiquitous contract and an overall more open public review time of the upcoming October 26 PAB recommendations as well. As Mayor Gloria and Police Chief Nislet in San Diego have both stated, there has been a reduction in violent crime in the past few years in local San Diego neighborhoods. We should realize from this that current smart streetlight technology seems to be doing its job. With this reason spoken here above, I think it can be clear there's not a strong public safety need or pressure to vote for a final approval of the Smart Streetlight contract by mid-November 2023, and that mid-December 2023 can give everybody a bit more time to ask questions and to see things more openly, clearly, and publicly before a final approval. I hope these words can be begin a process that we can more openly consider a clear, good timetable this fall to offer clarity and to better consider good tech accountability guidelines and ideals can help build trust, good intentions, and legitimacy this fall, and help reduce and relieve the.
Thank you, Blair. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be the original draw, and the original draw will be our last speaker on this item.
Good morning. As October is Vaccine Injury Month, I would like to do a PSA for those in San Diego County to let them know about a vaccine injury support group. It is called We Care For You 99. It is, you can go to wecareforyou99 at AOL.com to find out more information, or go to Instagram at wecareforyou99. You can also find out more about vaccinations at vaccinationinformationnetwork.com. The next meeting for this support group will be November 2nd at 11 a.m. That's a Thursday at Super Bloom Coffee and Juice. That's 2688 East Mission Bay Drive, San Diego 92109. This is a place for people who have been injured by vaccines or know somebody who has. It doesn't have to be a COVID-19 vaccine. It's all of the vaccines. And this is a place where all people are welcome. Again, it's called We Care for You 99. It's a vaccine injury support group, a place where all people are welcome and can come talk about things that are very difficult to talk about. It's time to start a conversation. Please go to wecareforyou99 at AOL.com or at wecareforyou99 on Instagram. And again, vaccinationinformationnetwork.com is provided you more information. But the next We Care for You 99 Vaccine Injury Support Group will be November 2nd at 11 a.m. at Super Bloom Coffee and Juice, 2688 East Mission Bay Drive, San Diego 92109. Hope to see you guys there. Everybody is welcome, and know that this is a place where you can come and talk about things that are very difficult to talk about, but knowing that you're not alone. Everybody needs support during this time, and this is a place where everyone can feel welcome. So please share with those that you love. You never know who needs to hear it. Again, it's We Care for You 99. God bless.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Francesca. So as part of general comments, we'll have comments from staff as well. So next we have Colleen. We provide an end-use agency update.
Thank you, Chair Shu, and good morning, everyone. Just a few updates on the last board meeting last Friday. I know some of you were there, but Chairwoman Vargas formed a subcommittee to lead the nationwide search for our next SANDAG CEO and laid out a work plan for that. So that was one item. Also, the board of directors approved the amendment to the 2021 regional plan to remove the road usage charge. The board approved that plan, and it has now been submitted to the state of California for their review. I will be up in Sacramento next week for some meetings, and I'm going to check in with them, make sure they received it, and check to see if they have any questions so that we can continue to make sure that any questions they have are being answered so we can get that amendment approved. Also, Chair Jonathan Frankel, so he's the chair of the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee. He came and provided an update to the board, which included the ITALK committee's goals for the year, their triennial performance, audit progress, and highlights on our current Transnet projects. And we are also here at the agency looking at progress that has been made in implementing the Transnet projects, and we will be starting, bless you. We will be providing regular updates to the board about that over the next several months. Also earlier in the month, our office hosted the first meeting of the Lausanne Regional Rail Corridor Working Group. So right here in this room, and it's being chaired by California Undersecretary Mark Tollefson from the California State Transportation Agency. And we had Senate Pro Tem Atkins here, Senator Blakespear here. We had representatives from virtually every single agency along the Lausanne corridor, and it's an incredible commitment to really make sure that we raise the level of awareness of the importance of the Lausanne corridor and really invest in that corridor so that it is a truly viable option for travel up and down the state of California. I think the big thing that came out of that is we're only as strong as our weakest link. We're making investments here in the San Diego region, but investments are needed in San Clemente, and they're needed in multiple locations all along that corridor. So the working group will be coming together again early next year. And then we are also, in terms of things that are happening here, we did bring an item to the board of directors regarding the airport transit connection. I know Mayor Kranz, this is a favorite project of yours. So looking at how we have a high-speed transit connection from Santa Fe Depot into the airport. Any of us who have been to the airport see the tremendous amount of construction happening there, the increase in ridership. or the increase in passenger travel at the airport. And really, in order to address the issues of traffic around the airport, this is really what is needed to solve that problem. So work is underway to continue to engage community groups and stakeholders on the progress being made there. So those conclude my remarks for today, and happy to answer any questions from any of you. Thank you.
Any questions or comments or general comments from any board committee members? Councilman Duncan.
Thank you. On a somewhat SANDAG related issue, I just wanted to give a brief heads up to the other board members that this morning, the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta, on his website issued a press release with the city of Coronado and the governor and the Department of Housing and Community Development regarding a stipulated judgment and agreement that was reached between all of the parties regarding Coronado's RENA housing allocation and our plan to resolve that issue. Just briefly, as you may know, the allocation to Coronado in 2021 was a 1,800% increase from any other allocation Coronado's ever received. And in my opinion, and I believe the cities, we felt it was impossible to comply. And one of the main parts of this stipulated judgment that's filed with the court today and discussed in the announcement on the Attorney General's site is that we've reached an agreement regarding 374 new units that are being built on the Navy base. We look forward to hopefully coming up with some common sense basis in the future to allow that type of housing to continue, because as you may recall, when the housing allocation took place in 2021, Coronado was allocation was based in large part in regard to the jobs on the Navy base, but the housing on the Navy base was not counted or allowed to potentially be counted, even if it was brand new housing in regard to our allocation. But in regard to the remainder of the allocation, we worked very closely with HCD and the state to come up with sites that would comply. Again, I thought we did not have any that would reach the 912 units that we now have assigned to us. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up because it's an interesting issue potentially for other cities as well as the SANDAG related issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Duncan. Any other comments from any committee members? If not, let's go on to our consent calendar. Moving on to consent calendar, unless there are any member comments or questions on the consent calendar, I can entertain a motion to approve the 4 items on the consent.
Chair, if we could allow for public comment
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry.
consent first as well.
Maybe we should do a public comment first, and then we'll come back to committee members. Any public commenters?
Thank you. We do have 2 public commenters online. We'll start with the original draw and then go to Blair Beekman.
Oh my gosh, you almost forgot how to run a meeting here. Get some coffee. I don't know. So number 3, your whole quarterly status and smart growth incentive program. Just the fact that we're, incentivizing people to push the 2021 plan and for, this El Cajon smart growth incentive. They needed time extension. It doesn't seem like they're able to complete projects. And, when we're talking about affordable housing, like in the city of San Diego, they're doing a miserable job in the county. So it's like everybody is failing at providing, affordable housing. You want to build all this density near transit. But what's happening is the people aren't even able to get into these homes because they're not being completed. And there's a bunch of, middle income and higher, and people can't even afford that. I mean, what's considered low income is like $500,000 to $900,000, depends on who's creating it. But all of this is forcing people out. And then when the transit comes in and changes what it's doing, and where they're having transit, it can mess with the project's plans, and then stuff doesn't get done. And so we're just sitting here not providing any kind of affordable housing for people. We're more concerned about building densely, and this is leaving people and causing more homelessness because we're never providing what we need to for people to move into something that they can afford. We need to quit, paying like all this attention to this smart growth BS and incentivizing people to do stuff that isn't helping the community. Instead, we need to be having affordable housing for everybody. It shouldn't just be a certain amount of people, but you know, we're leaving all these people behind, and it's quite sad as the homeless problem continues to get worse. And we act like we're going to do something, but then we fail miserably at providing what they need, but we're willing to do anything for the climate.
I think our next speaker will be Blair Beekman. Blair, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. To add to the words of what the previous speaker just spoke to, yeah, I think affordable housing is really important, and I'm a big fan of the concept of mixed income ideas and how to make that a more regular part of our conversation when we talk about affordable housing and housing needs altogether. It provides an amazing flexibility in how to talk about choices and cooperation. And I just think it's an important language to understand, and really it should be a regular part of how to address issues like the Smart Growth Project that I hope, I think we're kind of mandated to work more mixed income ideas by 2029. I hope you guys can learn to start doing that work now and make it more a regular part of our lives now. With that said, as always, you know, with these sort of items and growth issues, there's a lot of, you know, different mobile transit ideas are part of this issue too. I think that I hope that you really are considering accountability with the technology that will be involved with this. When you practice open public policies, sharing with the public the technology and not being afraid to share, that is building our collective, holistic, good, sustainable future. And that's developing Vision Zero well. That's creating community harmony. You know, you're building trust. You're building that we're not building the future of our society based on war and us versus them. We're building it together in openness and not in secrecy. Really good luck how to talk about technology openly. It should not have to be weird. That's an important lesson to learn. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on consent.
Thank you, Francesca. Do we have any committee member comments or things that anyone want to pull? No.
No, I just make a motion that we approve the
I
consent.
actually have one
have a
minor correction that I should throw in there. So the minutes of the last transportation committee or joint regional boards and public safety committee members meeting on the 6th, I was actually not present, and I think the minutes show that I was present. So if that correction could be made, that'd be great. And other than that, I don't think there's any other items that.
So with that correction, my motion to approve the consent calendar would stand.
Thank you. Moved by Duncan. Any second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Pereira. So we have a motion and a second. We can go ahead and vote on the consent calendar.
And that motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. Well, let's move on. Next, we have a report update on the SANDAG tribal programs, and we have Paula here to get us started on that. So this is just for information, but I'm glad we have this on the agenda.
Good morning, members. Thanks for having us. I am Paula Zamudio, and I'm the tribal liaison here at SANDAG, bringing you this update on SANDAG's tribal program and tribal consultation. I'm very pleased to have starting our presentation today, Erica Pinto, chairwoman of the Jamul Indian Village of California, and she's going to share with us a bit on the tribal nations in our region. And if I could just... Big button.
Paula, it's okay to report from here, correct?
I think
Okay.
you're good, yeah.
Okay, so good morning, Transportation Committee. As you can see from the screen, we have a bird's eye view, well, higher than that, but a map of the San Diego County region that shows all the 18 tribes in San Diego County. And I often hear, 17, 18, how many is it? So it's 17 tribal governments and 18 tribes. So there's one tribal reservation that's called El Capitan Grande, and that sits between Viejas and Barona. So they don't have an elected government there, but there it is right there. It's gorgeous. I've been there. I grew up on Viejas, so I used to, run around that area. But we have the most tribes in any other county in the nation. I think everybody can hears that as well. So one thing that we do appreciate here from SANDAG is that the executive director's not here, but we collaborate with SANDAG. We consult with SANDAG. So we have 13, I had to do the detail here, 13 Kumeyaay tribes, and then 4 Liseño Kuya tribes. So, and then it gets even more detailed in there. So within the Kumeyaay tribes, we have something called Ipai, and that's our language, and that's to the north. So the Santa Isabel, San Pascual, those are the northern Kumeyaay tribes. Not to get all complicated on everybody, but and then we have the southern Kumeyaay tribes, which are the Tipai, which is my people. So there's a difference between the Kumeyaay people. And Kuya is over there in the top. Then you got the Quipeños, then you got the Liseños, the Rincon, the Pala, the Palma, Hoya. So I think we should all take great pride in knowing that we have a pretty diverse tribal nation makeup here, but also the most in any other county. I like to say that too. Is there another slide, or is this the only one that I'm touching on?
I think that was it. Unless
That's it, really? Well, what else can I say? Well, in November, it's the Native American month. So I just want to get ahead of the game right now. And that's a month where a lot of schools and the county is actually going to raise the Kumeyaay flag for the first time ever. And so that's awesome. And then the whole month is celebrating the diverse culture that we have. And I do want to say one thing too, because, we're all elected officials around this table. And I hear the public comment, and sometimes it could be brutal in here, in the board meetings. And so I sit back and I listen, but it's the same in the tribal government arena. Sometimes we get knocked down and we get up. But as for me, I continue on to do the best that I can as an elected official. And I'm the first woman elected in my tribe. And maybe some of the guys, look at that a little bit like, women, but I love my people, whether they're Liseños, whether they're Kuiyas, Kumeyaay, all my tribal people deserve a seat at the table and consult, because we're all in the East County, we're all rural, we all want economic development. And I had a really good discussion with Paula. We want to take care of our people and our constituents just like everybody around this table. And so I will say one other thing is that SCTCA is made up of 23 plus tribes. And that's inclusive of all these tribes here, but also Agua Caliente and Palm Springs, Chemehuevi, Torres Martinez. I will announce this good news because I like to put a lot of things on my plate. So one thing in September, at the end of the month, it's California Native American Day, to complicate it even more for everybody here. It's California Native American Day, the 4th Friday of the month. And we have something called the Tribal Leaders Forum, where we meet with the governor, we meet with each other, we get to know each other, because it's always a revolving door, not only in here, but in the tribal nations too. There's elections. And I was elected as the chairwoman for the California California Tribal Chairs Association. So that's 90 plus tribes. And so I have to look and be vigilant about all the issues that we face, because I want to put them to the forefront when I go to DC in November, each November. All the tribal nations, 574-ish tribes in the United States, we get to go to see the president. And I'll circulate to you guys a picture of myself and President Biden. I'm being made fun of because it looks like a dang prom picture. But anyway, because the guy's good to us. And so is Hassan Ikrada, the executive director here. And with tribes, we're inclusive. We love our LGBTQ people, Two-Spirit people, we call them. And so we should all keep that in mind, that right now in the world, it's a heightened sensitivity. There's a lot of stuff happening, and I feel that. And I know we all feel it here at this table. So for the public to come in here and express, that's a good thing. To hear all these things that we have to say and share, we want to hear from the public. I want to hear from the public, and I know you do too. But I would just ask the public who are listening to, be mindful that, times are tough right now for all of us, and to be gentle with each other. Express yourself. I love what the doctor had to say, doctor, in that, when you think about air, you never think about the things until it's before your eyes. It's impacting you. Air is a big deal. For me to be able to sit here and take a deep breath, it's a big deal to me. And I don't really appreciate that until you're hit with that in your face. And my mom, a year ago today, was diagnosed with something called IPF. It's pulmonary fibrosis. It's a terminal illness. And so healthcare are my big issues. The environment and making sure that we're taking care of it are big issues, because it's all connected. And it's almost like a give and take. And I'm sorry to go on this tangent, but I feel like I need to say this. So when you think of the straws, the straw issue, papers versus plastic. I saw this video of a turtle with a straw in its nose. I cut my straws out. But then now there's the paper straws. And I don't know how true this is, but now there's PFAS and the paper straws. So this is a forever chemical. So I'm like, do I want to get PFAS on my body? I'll just do away with them and get yellow teeth when I drink my coffee. It's all good. But anyway, we're here to do a job. The tribal nations are thankful to be a part of here, even though it's an advisory capacity. We love it. I love to see everybody here and hear the public comments. And let's just be mindful and respect one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Did I get off on a tangent?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
So here you can see the various elements of our tribal consultation plan on this slide. We work really closely, as the Chairwoman Pinto alluded, with the tribal nations in the region through a solidified government-to-government framework that was established in 2007. It established advisory roles on the board of directors and on our committees like this one. This type of arrangement is pretty uncommon at the local or even regional level, as it's most commonly been applied at the state and federal level. So as part of each regional plan update cycle, we work with the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, the SATCA, to establish an MOU and a work plan that details the priorities that we have and how we're going to be collaborating. So again, you can see some of those elements of the consultation plan there. And then once that consultation plan is decided on, we have ongoing collaboration that takes place through a variety of meetings. This is a mouthful, Interagency Technical Working Group on Tribal Transportation Issues. We'll call it the Tribal Technical, or the Tribal Working Group for short. That's been meeting regularly since 2006, so it does have a good history here at SANDAG. These are quarterly meetings that provide opportunities for, of course, consultation on the regional plan, as well as a forum for tribal leaders to discuss transportation issues and projects that are relevant to tribes.
Paula, may I add something to the quarterly meetings? I also chair this one also. And it's really important to note here that with the tribes, when you think of the roads in the backcountry in the rural area, it's all about safety. It's all about, we talk about the bicycle lanes in the backcountry. We want safe access to our reservations, all 18 of them. My reservation is 20 minutes from here. So we're pretty close to downtown San Diego. It takes me, a few minutes to get there, but in the backcountry, the roads are 2-lane highways, and we need to really focus on, there's some economic developments back there too. And so at these meetings, we come to the table, we've identified 2 projects, one in the north and one in the south, that we are going to try to obtain funding for. So just to note that safety is a big priority for the tribes. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about those projects in a couple slides, Chairwoman. So in the tribal working group, it's important to note that in addition to tribal leaders and of course SANDAG, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Caltrans, the County of San Diego, as well as our transit operators participate in those meetings. We also have a tribal task force that's a monthly meeting, again, allows for more coordination, agenda setting for the working group. Participants of the task force are generally staff or members of tribes who work in planning and members of those agencies who are part of the working group. Then you see here the Regional Tribal Summit. The first Tribal Summit was convened in 2002 between leaders tribal leaders and the SANDAG Board of Directors. Those typically happen every 4 years, and again, really just provide an opportunity for SANDAG Board of Directors to get together with tribal leaders, discuss priorities, areas of ongoing coordination, cooperation. These typically, I think I said this, happen every 4 years. We next bullet down, tribal symposium. These are meant to be every year. Of course, both of these have been interrupted by the pandemic, but the tribal symposium, we're pleased to be planning one next month on November 15th. And those meetings are tribal leaders together with the Borders Committee, and similar to the tribal summits, allow for ongoing discussion and the talks on policy areas for collaboration and how we can incorporate mobility needs into our region. So I said, we are pleased to be planning our next tribal symposium on November 15th. We are working towards hosting again a tribal summit in 2024 after, a few years of interruption because of the pandemic. And then here you can see a sample of the collaborative efforts that we are working on currently with tribes. This very first one, another mouthful, Intra-Regional Tribal Transportation Strategy, or ITTS for short. The ITTS identifies tribal transportation needs. So all the tribes said, here's all of the transportation needs that we have on our reservations. We put them all in one place. It's more than 200 projects. We use this very important document to inform our ongoing planning efforts, including, of course, the regional plan, as well as our comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. So the chairwoman referenced the 2 priority projects. We worked with the tribes to identify these 2 projects that are both in the ITTS and the regional plan. Those are improvements to State Route 76 from Rice Canyon Road to Paula Reservation, and interchange improvements at Interstate 8 and West Willows Road. Both of these projects are moving forward to prepare for the next stage of design and environmental assessment. The next thing you see there, staff is working with SCTCA again on a plan to distribute $2 million of the funding that SANDAG received through the state's Regional Early Action Planning Grant. The funds are going to accelerate plans for housing development on or near tribal reservations. And then SANDAG, again, working with the SCTCA, applied jointly and was awarded nearly $500,000 for a local agency technical assistance grant to improve internet connectivity for the Tribal Digital Village, which is a tribal-led internet network that serves 105 tribal buildings and up to 500 households. The project's gonna include an internet connectivity plan and implementation strategy for high quality internet service for tribal lands. And then finally, Vision Zero, you heard the chairwoman talk about safety. It is absolutely a topic that comes up at many of our meetings. Staff is working right now with the La Jolla Band of Luiseño Indians on their Safe Streets and Roads for All action plan in tandem with SANDAG's Vision Zero action plan. The effort's going to create a safety action plan for the tribe that's going to allow them to be eligible to apply for implementation funds and create templates that other tribes will be able to use for their safety action plans. So a lot happening. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chairwoman, and I'm happy to pass it back to you, Chair, for comments or questions.
Sure. Let's go on to public comments, and then we can get the comments and questions from members of the committee.
Thank you. We do have 3 public comments on this item. I'll start with the person with the phone number ending in 294, and then we'll go to Blair Beekman.
Hello, everyone. When I first moved to California in July, I didn't know what help was available to get me back and forth to my dialysis appointments, which are 3 times a week. In the beginning, I had to rely on Uber
Sorry to
and
interrupt
Lyft.
you, but I think you may have wanted to speak on item 7, not on item 6. Is that right?
I'm speaking on transportation?
Yes, that's actually, so right now we're taking comments on the SANDAG tribal program update.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll wait for the transportation to come up again. I'm so sorry.
Calling you again at that time and we'll reset your time. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go on to Blair Beekman then. Blair, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. This is a really nice item to hear. Thank you for myself. I guess for myself, to start with, I hope my feelings and ideas, I'm kind of new to the process. I really try to add something hopeful and helpful. I don't mean to be cutting down. I'm learning how to offer ways to be constructive in my ideas and thoughts. It's thoughts I think we usually have, but we just don't know how to make more open, public, and regular. And that can be a bit nervous for people sometimes. So thank you for your patience with myself in that. With that all said, just a real sorry for the events that have happened in Lahaina with the Lahaina wildfire. I've said here before at SANDAG, I think it's what's interesting is that in the least, I think we're learning in California not to work in the same terms that we used to work in, that I think Lahaina is stuck in. I think Lahaina is going to learn some really important lessons. The state of Hawaii is going to learn some really important lessons. How California is trying to grow out of their past, a disaster capitalism past, basically, is what it comes down to. We're leaving that era here in California. We're preparing in good terms, in decent terms. The work I do with tech accountability, it really lends itself to really important good practices that I think can really help in ways that tribal areas and like how they're going to have to rebuild the future of the Lahaina area. It really needs to consider, indigenous rights issues and how to rebuild. And I think the work I do with tech accountability helps itself lend to that process. And I hope my work at tech accountability can help the tribal nations here build the future they're working towards. It can really help dialogue in that direction. I'm really interested to work with yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
Yeah, it's sad because in Lahaina, those people wanted to preserve their native land and the government burned it down and took it because these people wouldn't sell it. And, I'm not being racist. I'm actually Native American. And, what's happening is the government is going into these tribes and, acting like they're going to help. But really, it's taking the sovereignty from these people. And it's really sad to see. And I'm not saying that they don't have needs, but all of a sudden, when you let the government come in, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. And, it should be staying separate from the government. And that was, what, generations were doing for so long. And now it's just bleeding together and it's just getting mixed in. And the 2-lane highways are something that are really bad because there are regular accidents on those. But I mean, a lot of that has to do with like drunk driving or somebody being high as a kite. This whole Vision Zero thing, it's like the land is something that is sacred. And, what's happening with this Vision Zero, it's like being destroyed by pretending to save it. And I don't understand if, these tribes are not looking into what is actually going on to mine for these minerals that they're using for this zero energy and the lithium batteries, how they're combustible. And, you put them on your land and you're going to have a fire that you can't put out. And, it's just totally toxic, even just to mine for those things. And, children are mining for them and they shouldn't even be touching that. And so I just feel like, it's sad that, people who, for so long were, wanting to preserve that we're just allowing it to be destroyed at an astronomical level out of the guise of saving it. And everybody does need a seat at the table and not everybody has one. And that's what's so sad.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you, Francesca. Do we have any member comments or questions? Mayor Krantz.
Yes, I wanted just to say thanks for the presentation and it's very interesting to see the background. I know the city of Encinitas has struggled with the necessary collaboration on land use issues with tribes, and we are trying to improve on that. We were fortunate enough to be able to acquire a piece of land that it borders Carlsbad. It's further northernmost part of our city. And we had a sage burning ceremony there with members of the San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians. Also ended up with a member of the Lusueña. I can't remember the exact tribe, but it was very interesting to hear the conversation. And when I look at the map that was displayed, and there is this hard line between the Lusueño and the Kumeyaay, from what I learned that day, there is some overlap on those borders. So it does present a bit of a challenge when it comes to consulting, but we have pledged to comply with the law and do as much as we can. I also want to say that I appreciate your leadership and although I'm a fat old white guy, I do believe that having more women in leadership is very important for our world. And so I appreciate the efforts that you're making and look forward to continuing the consultation with the tribes.
Thank you. Any other? Let's go with Caltrans, and then I'll go and I'll come back to you.
I too wanted to thank Paula and Chairwoman Pinto for the presentation. As mentioned, a lot of the tribes' transportation network is served by state highways, 2-lane state highways. So all of us at Caltrans are aware of the need for safe roads to be able to evacuate the rural communities, including the tribes, in case of wildfires, which have become more prevalent in the last few years because of climate change. So we are happy to be a big part of the solutions for the transportation needs of the tribes, and also for the 2 specific projects that were mentioned on I-8 at Willows and at 76 as well. So we'll be working with SANDAG on developing the projects for those 2 through the process of environmental and design, as Paul has mentioned. Thank you.
And my apologies, I should have mentioned we are working very closely with Caltrans on both of those.
Thank you, Gustavo. Colleen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to Hassan is not here today, but I know he would really appreciate the compliments from the chairwoman. And I think it's really important, and I know he would say this, that we're extremely fortunate to have a leader like Chairwoman Pinto, who's willing to share the tribal technical working group and making sure that the tribes engage, because that can often be something that seems overwhelming to tribes. They're just trying to run their nations, but they have to come to the table, share information. We actually, through the chairwoman's leadership, put together, which is like a regional transportation plan for tribes. And that is now part of the regional plan that we bring forward to the board of directors every 4 years. And so your leadership at the local level here and state continues to also help bring funding to this region. And when we look at the kind of projects that tribes are doing here, that's not happening in other places. And that is because of the leadership. And so just really want to express our thanks to you and dedication. We know that you're trying to run a nation at home, but being here, your present is just really invaluable. So thank you.
And I just expressed my appreciation for all the comments around the table today, and also the comments from the public. I believe it's the original draw, and also Dr. Blair Beekman. Thank you guys on the line, and thank you everybody here.
Any other comments? If not, I have a few, well, not a question, but more of a comment. With regards to bringing broadband services to the tribal lands and facilities, do we know how sufficient this is, the numbers that you gave, the 500 homes and other buildings on the tribal land? What percentage does that take in terms of fully providing the needs in those territories and for those communities?
I don't have that information, but we can follow up.
Yeah, and I'll just bring up the point that particularly, I think it's been brought up during the COVID crisis, how important broadband services are in connecting people and maybe reducing the amount of travel that's needed, because broadband is, in a way, the new free way for in the future or even now, so that people can telecommute, get certain services, certainly get information, education services. They can get a lot of education classes online, and then even medical advice. So several of my past few doctor's visits were online. It's not to necessarily replace a physical exam, but it certainly was helpful for me to get good medical advice and consultation from a physician totally online. And I thought that was great. So I really hope we move forward on that and meet all the needs in the tribal territories. And lastly, I want to make a quick comment to Chair Pinto. You know, you've come to many of our meetings and both at the SANDAG board meeting and here at Transportation Committee. I really appreciate you being here. And, you know, it's okay. You could take more time and speak and make your comments. Particularly, I think you also bring a spiritual value to our meetings, which I really welcome. So thank you for doing that. So I hope you continue to show us your leadership.
I want to bring an entertainment value as well. Chair Shu. Killers of the Flower Moon comes out today. I would advise you to go see it, about the Osage people. Very interesting. Read the book. It's a very sad story, but go see it.
Thank you. Also, information item, we can go on to item number 7. So we have both Jenny and Brian will present the overview of funding opportunities available for specialized transportation services like RideFact program. And just a reminder, this was an item that this committee asked for staff to come back with some options in terms of funding distribution with the various programs we have for specialized transportation.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Transportation Committee. I'm here with my colleague Jenny Russo to provide you with the details that you requested at your meetings over the last few months regarding identifying long-term funding for FACT. Just a little background on CTSA. FACT is a local nonprofit organization that was selected through a competitive process in 2006 to serve as the region's Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, or CTSA as we call it. In this role, FACT operates a call center for referrals, holds quarterly meetings with other specialized transportation providers and stakeholders, bless you, and provides a database of regional providers on its website. The CTSA designation has no termination date. In fact, receives approximately $190,000 annually in Transportation Development Act, TDA, you're going to hear that acronym a lot, funding for these services. Separate from its CTSA designation, FACT also operates 2 transportation service programs, RideFact and RideFact Now, which are primarily funded through the SANDAG grant programs. These services are not currently included in the CTSA designation, therefore FACT has to compete for funding to sustain those services. RideFact is FACT's main transportation service program. It provides a county-wide transportation service for both older adults and individuals with disabilities. RideFact is different from the paratransit services provided by MTS and NCTD, as it can take the rider from inside the residence directly to their requested destination, such as medical office, grocery store, or senior centers, and it does not rely on the fixed route. Riders do have to pay a fee for their trip based on the distance they are traveling. FACT requested $800,000 in funding for RideFact to the Cycle 12 Specialized Transportation Grant Program and was awarded $343,435 as part of that. When the STGP funding recommendations were approved by the Board of Directors in February, staff was directed to work with you to identify some dedicated funding options for these services that could be considered. So I'm going to turn things over to Jenny to provide you with the options that we have identified and next steps that could be considered.
Good morning. The discussion memo outlines the various sources that SANDAG has discretion over and can be used for specialized transportation services like RideFact. Staff has identified 3 of those sources for consideration that are shown on this slide. I'll go over these sources in more detail, including factors that you may want to consider. So first is the Section 5310 program. This is part of our Specialized Transportation Grant Program, or STGP, and funds are distributed through a competitive process that occurs every 2 years. When approving the most recent call for project selection criteria last year, the board authorized staff to provide a direct allocation of Section 5310 funding for enhanced CTSA services. The allocation was recommended in previous TDA triennial audits, which noted that the amount of funding provided to the CTSA for the services established in 2009 should be increased. As mentioned in the report, RideFact services are not included in the current CTSA scope, so these additional funds are used for other CTSA activities like maintaining the brokerage, administering an accessible vehicle sharing program, and other regional representation and coordination activities. The Board of Directors could allocate additional Section 5310 funding for RideFact services as part of their consideration of the upcoming Cycle 13 call for projects, which is anticipated to be brought to this committee and the board next May or June. If approved, SANDAG could then amend the CTSA contract to include RideFact services and the additional Section 5310 funding. It's important to note that the FTA requires a 20% match from non-DOT sources. If FACT were given a direct allocation of Section 5310 funding, it would need to provide the required matching funds. FACT has historically used its senior mini grant funding as matching funds, and for the Section 5310 award, it won through the Cycle 12 call for projects. FACT will be using its Cycle 1 Access for All grant as a match. Similar to the Section 5310 program, the Transnet Senior Mini Grant Program, or SMG, is part of the SANDAG Specialized Transportation Grant Program, and funds are distributed through a biennial competitive process. The Transnet ordinance requires that the Senior Mini Grant funding be distributed through this competitive process. The Board of Directors could provide a direct allocation of Senior Mini Grant funding for RideFact by approving an amendment to the Transnet ordinance. SANDAG could then amend the CTSA contract to include RideFact services and the dedicated funding. And the third option is Transportation Development Act, or TDA funding, which is used primarily for transit operations, but up to 5% can be allocated for community transit services, which include services for disabled individuals who cannot use conventional transit. SANDAG administers this funding consistent with Board Policy 27 and allocates 2%, or approximately $195,000 annually, to the CTSA. The remainder, or about $9.5 million for FY24, is proportionally allocated to the transit operators. The Board of Directors could consider changing the TDA allocations among MTS and CTE and the CTSA. As with the other funding mentioned previously, the CTSA contract could then be amended to include RideFact services and the dedicated funding. So this concludes our presentation on the options could be considered. Brian and I are happy to answer any questions you may have, and I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Jenny and Brian. Let's go ahead to have some public comments. So Francesca, do we have public comments? And again, I think we have a good list of folks that want to speak. So 2 minutes for each.
Thank you, Chair. We do have quite a bit of public comment on this item. I'll start with the folks who are here with us in the room and then move over to Zoom. So we'll start with Karen, if you'd like to step up to the podium, and after Karen will be Abdi. No, Karen? Okay. I will go ahead and move on to Abdi then, if you're here. No? How about Tony? Deb Martin. Perfect. You'll have 2 minutes when you get up to the podium. And after Deb, Brett is the next person I have on the list.
Good morning. My name is Deb Martin, the Executive Director of Elder Hope of San Diego, a Senior Mini Grant grantee transportation provider. And I realize FACT and SANDAG have a very symbiotic relationship, and it's a very needed service. What I'm hoping won't get lost in all of this is the fair, unbiased, equitable process for all of us. And also the value and importance of the other transportation programs who rely on this funding as well. So I realize this is complicated. I don't envy the staff on this task. None of my comments I'm about to make are directed at FACT per se. They're about the process and the impact on our other agencies. First of all, in the past 3 cycles, between 64 and 72% of senior mini grant funding has been allocated to just 2 agencies. This does not include 5310 monies. If FACT had been awarded the extra $400,000 this year, that would have been 86% of senior mini grant funding going to just 2 agencies, leaving the rest of the valuable, viable agencies between 15 and 30% of that remaining money to be divided among them. I'm not aware of any concerns about scoring bias with past cycles until this one. There have been several worthy transportation programs that have been unfunded, defunded, or not fully funded in past cycles, yet there was no concern or discussion about scoring bias during those cycles, nor can I imagine that any of us would have been able to come back to this committee and ask for reconsideration or additional funding. And I do want to note, even though FACT did not get all their funding, it's my understanding that another grantee forfeited funding and they were awarded that money. And so I do believe they received their almost full funding for the cycle. Okay. I do have concerns about changing a grant process and scoring guidelines if the outcome may indirectly create bias towards one agency over another. That may not be the intent, but right now it is the perception. I would have questions about removing, I would have questions about removing one potential grantee from the bidding process and providing guaranteed
Thank you. Your
funds.
time's
Sorry,
expired.
I didn't see the 1-minute warning. Anyways, thank you for your time. I did provide a letter. Hopefully it will be circulated.
Our next speaker will be Brett. I do see Brett online as well, so I'll come to you there if that's the same person. Actually, I'm noticing quite a few of you are in line and in person. Okay, sorry, bear with me just a moment. I'm going to go to Marcy Roque in the room.
Good morning. My name is Marcy Roque, and I serve as the president and CEO of Travelers Aid San Diego. We are a 122-year-old social services agency with a long history of assisting San Diego's most vulnerable populations with a variety of transportation-related services and programs. Assisting very low-income older adults with their transportation needs has been the focus of our work for the last 15 years. In our Senior Ride, Ride Finder, and Senior Solutions programs, each month we provide an average of 15,000 one-way passenger trips to 250 clients and assist and guide 1,600 unduplicated individuals with information, referrals, transit training, and travel training. We serve nearly 1,400 active clients with bus passes, paratransit, taxi script, rideshare rides, and rides with volunteer drivers. We operate county-wide, and all our services are free to our clients. These individuals cannot afford $20 or even $10 for a trip, and without our services would have to make hard decisions about whether to go to a doctor, pay rent, or purchase groceries. Travelers Aid has participated in each funding cycle since 2008, and we are proud to have been selected by the scoring committees during each of these competitive processes. The options to fund RideFact program placed before the committee are of concern to my organization. RideFact is a needed service, and we've referred hundreds of clients to the program over the years. We consider FACT a partner and enjoy a positive relationship with the organization. It does not serve the region for RideFact to be unfunded. That said, I have concerns about some of the options listed. Changing how senior mini grant funding and Section 5310 funding is awarded by separately awarding FACT for their RideFact program out of these pools will potentially impact my organization, my hardworking staff, and our clients. I encourage SANDAG and the Transportation Committee to look into other sources of funding beyond subtracting what is needed to fund RideFact from the SMG and Section 5310 competitive processes. Moving limited funding dollars around will not solve the problems our region faces in serving specialized populations. Adding more sources of funding in greater amounts is the way to move forward and elevate all worthy and qualified organizations and municipalities who partner with SANDAG.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Arun Prem. And after Arun, we'll go to the folks on Zoom and start with Brett.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate the discussion going on today. I understand the concerns I heard from my colleagues here today as also very well. This is a tough time, not that there's any good time to talk about funding, but this is a particularly difficult time. I know the transit industry in San Diego, also in California, rest of the country is going through what we're calling the fiscal cliff that's looming ahead in the next 5-6 years when we will have big deficits in the transit budgets. So I appreciate the scenario we're in. I appreciate we often end up in these zero-sum type situations having these discussions. But I want to present some context to this discussion that I hope will help with the overall situation, the discussion, eventually the resolution, hopefully. To use the fiscal cliff analogy a little, to extend it a little further, FACT has been living on a fiscal cliff since we were created in 2006. We've never had funding for more than 2 years promised to us, and that's the crux of this discussion. That's why this discussion arose after the TC reviewed the recommendations from Cycle 12, realizing that this service is essential. It's not like many of the other services you heard about today. Our role as CTSA is to support all the other services, fill the gaps, provide strike support services, for example. That's what we did recently with MTS, provide rescues when there's public service safety shutdowns. So it's an essential, hard to provide, expensive service. No one else is providing these services right now, and there is a need to fund these services sustainably. The CTSA cannot be effective, as you heard from my colleagues here, if it has to compete for funding against the other services.
I'm sorry,
so I hope
your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's most of my comment today. Thank you.
I'm going to go over to the folks on Zoom now and start with Brett, and Brett will be followed by Samuel Khan.
Hi, thank you to the board for allowing me to speak on behalf of FACT. My name is Brett, and I'm 58 years old. And 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I have had the pleasure of using the ride services provided by FACT to assist me to and from doctor's appointments. FACT has allowed me a level of independence where I don't need to rely on friends and family to get me to and from these important appointments. When I was diagnosed, I built a care team to improve my quality of life, consisting of my primary physician, neurologist, physical therapist, and I now consider FACT a very valuable resource and member of my care team. I want to thank the board for allowing me time to share this with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Samuel Khan, who will be followed by Faraz Hasim.
Hi, my name is Sam Khan. I'm severely disabled and use a power wheelchair. I found out about FACT a few months ago during a time that I was stuck without transportation. I was searching for a way to get to my medical appointments and to get back home from my girlfriend's apartment where I was stranded at the time. Uber doesn't have accessible vehicles. Researching medical transport with wheelchair vans, I found that they would cost over $150 each way. With FACT, I was able to get everywhere I needed to go efficiently and affordably. For me, MTS Access Service has been either too restrictive or unreliable. With FACT, I can book a ride just an hour in advance and go anywhere in the county. The freedom that FACT provides is just unimaginable. And the peace of mind, knowing that I can get where I need to go, when I need to go, is even more valuable. Please support FACT to make the city more accessible for people like me. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Faraz, who will be followed by the original draw. I did want to mention, I know there was a member of the public who had raised their hand on the previous item. So if you'd still like to speak on item 7, if you could raise your hand for me and I'll call on you. So we'll go to Faraz now. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Faraz Jassim. I own a non-emergency medical transportation business here in San Diego, and we work with FACT. FACT is a very essential service here in San Diego. We take people, to dialysis, to very important doctor's appointment. For example, I got a call earlier this year from a lady saying that her husband has an appointment. He lost an eye already, and if he misses this appointment, he's gonna lose his second eye. Also, we take people from nursing homes to their doctor's appointment, and I'm not sure if everyone been in a nursing home. It's like a hospital basically, and that could be the only time for the patient to go out is when we take them to their doctor's appointment. So I fully support FACT. Please support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be the original draw, who will be followed by Blair Beekman.
Man, this one's kind of a catch-22 because, I was paralyzed for 8 years, and this is a really important, program for people who are handicapped and disabled and need to get around. But at the same time, the doctors were the ones that were keeping me sick, and all the medicines I was taking were killing me. So, it's like I want them to get around, but at the same time, I would hope that they could get out of that cycle too, because it's a death cycle, and it's sad. I didn't realize that until I could step outside and myself and really look at it from a different angle, because I believe that the medicines were actually helping me, and I was terrified not to take them. But this is really important for people to have a means of transportation because of all the things that you guys are doing with wanting people to ride public transit, and that not everybody can do that. And so we need to provide something for them to have a means and a way to get to places that they need to. But again, that's why I'm like, man, I don't want them to have to go to the doctor to a place where it could be potentially killing them. But again, we find funding for so many other things. And it's sad that there's limited funding in these programs so that, the people in them are fighting to get what they need as well. And it deprives others. So it's not even equitable. And, I know there's money out there sitting under some rock that we could pick up and, put into these programs so that they have a way to get around and not just, be left behind. And I feel like that's what happens a lot when we're doing things to, claim to improve stuff. We're not giving, equity to those who need a different means of transportation than the one that, you want everybody else to use. So, yeah.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blair Beekman, who will be followed by Christine Stensberg.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. This has been, there is a long-going contentious issue I'm understanding within SANDAG about the future of this sort of issue and how to fund. There's some really important questions about the future of individual rideshare programs in San Diego and how that can help with transportation needs. I think it's a really important, good idea and an important future to address. We may be a bit having a bit of trouble in how to better fund these ideas and practice these ideas. I'm sorry for people here on this item that they feel they're not getting the funding they need at this time. And it sounds like it's going to have to be addressed here. And this is an important program, a very well-established program. So good luck how maybe this program can be a base in how to build a future of better dialogue on the subject of ride-sharing programs and for the future of transportation that can be a more specialized, specific purpose. That I think that has an incredibly important future in San Diego. and for many major cities, it's just we have to go about thinking about its funding patterns a bit differently, possibly. So, good luck with this item and how you have to work on it, and all of these items around it. Thank you.
I think our next speaker will be Christine Stensberg, who will be followed by the person with the phone number ending in 294.
Hello, thank you so much for having this discussion. My name is Christine Stensberg. I'm with Jewish Family Service. JFS provides transportation solutions to older adults through the On the Go program. Last year, we provided over 30,000 rides, which are vital services to older adults to get to medical appointments and socialization. This is all possible due to the SANDAG funds. Our rides are donation-based or at an extremely reduced rate, and we hear every day about people that would be unable to afford any high rates and rely on JFS for their transportation needs. This funding helps us guarantee rides to all of these older adults. And it's a huge impact for anybody seeking medical care. I just want to echo the comments by Elder Help and Traveler's Aid about respecting the competitive bidding process. We all know that the demand for the services are going to continue to rise, and it's absolutely essential that the process stays non-biased and competitive. Thank you so much for allowing us to comment.
I think our final speaker on this item will be the person with the phone number ending in 294. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Karen Johnson, and I'm calling in because I want to emphasize the importance of fax transportation. I'm new to California, and when I came here, I didn't know what help was be available to get me back and forth to my dialysis and medical appointments 3 times a week. In the beginning, I had to rely on Uber and Lyft, which was costing me over $60 a day. And I live on a fixed income, so that was impossible for me to afford. When I asked for help finding affordable ways to get to my appointments, fax was my first option I found. The prices are affordable, and they make it easier for me to get to the care I need. Also, the drivers are so courteous, warm, and make me feel welcome in this new state. I love talking with them on my way to my appointments, and I want to emphasize the importance of the services fax provides. Without them, I would not be able to afford transportation to my medical appointments or dialysis. Knowing the services available to me makes me feel safer and in control of my health, and I hope the Transportation Committee would look at all the options to continue funding fax in the future. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. And that concludes the public commenters on this item.
Thank you, Francesca. So this is a pretty important matter, and I know there's many opinions around the committee today. I wanted to start out with some clarifying information first, and then go into a discussion amongst all of us, and then if we were going to take any action, so that we have a good process in which all of us get a chance to express our ideas, thoughts, concerns, and go forward with a collective action that will work for us. But the clarifying items I wanted to point out is, first of all, just to confirm, the SANDAG board did move last year with Councilman Duncan's support to make sure that our legislative push of SANDAG is to try to get additional funding for specialized transportation. And I hope that continues, and maybe we need to reemphasize that. And of course, I think Hassan and Colleen all know that if there's anything that any of us can do to help that, whether it be speaking to any of our legislators or anyone else, that would continue to do that, so we can improve the total amount of money that we need here, because that's I think the primary problem. The other is maybe for clarification issues, and because I simply don't know all the answers to this information. we talked about the Consolidated Transportation Service Agency, CTSA. I don't know if Jenny, Ryan, or someone else can help us understand what does that mean, and also how other regions in California use CTSAs, how they're arranged, and how they're selected, as well as what their obligations are.
Sure. So it's a state mandated program that each region should have. Not all. I don't know actually how mandated it is. It's an ask, and not all regions in the state actually have a CTSA. They generally, some don't even have transit agencies in their region, but those that do have kind of like us designated a CTSA, some in Los Angeles, it's Access, and they actually run all the paratransit, I believe, for the LA Metro. So their funding is, it's a whole different story than something here. Sacramento is kind of similar to Los Angeles. They also help run their paratransit services instead of the transit agencies through, work with the transit agency in Sacramento. There's some smaller CTSAs similar to FACT that have, very minimal dedicated funding and just do the small services that they can. And then they also have to compete for services. So it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of CTSA, but like we mentioned before, the only dedicated funding that FACT is getting from SANDAG, from that 2006 competition that guaranteed them to be the CTSA, is that about $190,000 of the TDA funds.
Colleen wanted to add to that.
Yes, just to add a couple things, and this is a question. I'm having our attorney look into this, but I thought in order to receive TDA funds, you have to have a CTSA. So there's that part. Then the selection of the CTSA is done through a competitive process. And so that was done more than a decade ago or 2 decades ago when FACT was selected to serve in that particular role. And there are very specific things that the CTSA is asked to do. And as part of that contract, there was a certain percentage of funds, I believe, that were set aside to support the CTSA. So there's that function of the CTSA. There's also just this bigger question about specialized transportation in general, which goes even beyond the CTSA role. And I think it's important, and I think you made this point, Chair. We know there's a growing need for specialized transportation, especially as the population ages. And it's a goal of this agency working with the transit agencies and the entire board of directors to figure out how do we grow that pie, because there's only so much money that we have available today. So looking at how do we actually increase the amount of funding that is available to help support this growing need. So those were just a couple comments to respond to your questions, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. But just, Ryan, if I heard you right, in other parts of California, CTSAs have a broader role, as well as maybe working with other providers and coordinating that. Thank you. So I had a number of early hands go up. So I'll start with Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a few questions. First, why is there no clear recommendation in staff's report for action? I'm concerned that staff's report presents this more as an informational item, and I think it's not clear to the public what action the Transportation Committee would be considering today.
Well, I think the reason there's no specific recommendation is the ask of us was to come back and bring options, and there's a lot in here. So there isn't really one clear decision that comes because it's kind of a give and take between different things. So we wanted to give you as much information as we could, but we're here obviously to help guide you and answer questions of things like that. But that's really the reason why, is there isn't a clear answer, as you've kind of heard through the public comments and the different things that are outlined in the recommendation.
Which leads me to further state that I think that it's very unclear for the public. Transparency is a big mantra of mine. I think it should be very transparent what we put before the public. So I do want to make note of that. I think I was confused, and I'm a council member with staff, so I could imagine that the public was as well, as to what direction the Transportation Committee was going or is going today, and also with staff's recommendation. I think it's unclear. Secondly, has MTS and NCTD been consulted about any proposal to divert CDA funding away from transit agencies? Especially, was there outreach to our partners about this potential shift?
So we have advised both the transit agencies. I think it's really important that you hear from them today, and also council member, to respond to you. Every single one of the different options that we put forth would have trade-offs. You'd be taking money from one program and putting into another program. And so that really does become a policy decision for you all. So our response was, here are the things that are available. Understand what the trade-offs. If you make this selection, that's where we would be taking from. Ultimately, our recommendation is grow the pie, as opposed to, taking something from something else at this point in time. But that, ultimately that is up to the board to make that decision.
Thank you. I am the MTS representative for the Transportation Committee, and I will say that something that has such a big potential impact on the MTS budget, it's concerning that more discussion wasn't had. I happen to be the budget chair for MTS. So this is very concerning that this is coming through as a potential action without proper notification. And I strongly support FACT. But I will say on behalf of MTS, we have a strong concern about the diversion of so much TDA funding going out so quickly. And I would urge the committee and staff to do more outreach to the transit agencies and then come back to this committee at a future date with a clearer agenda and also backup material. Thank you, Chair. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think Shinokuni from MTS had what next up on the queue.
Yeah, I thought I came into this meeting with a clearer understanding of what was being requested, but what Arun said that the money he's requesting is more for the CTSA portion of the responsibilities of FACT, but in the agenda it indicates it's more geared towards the Ride FACT and Ride FACT Now. I wonder if I could get clarification. Is this funding to actually contract with service providers and provide direct services, or is it funding for the CTSA functions of brokerage and website maintenance?
Yeah, and Brian, I think you could also refer to Arun to ask that question.
Yeah, we want to let Arun jump up and answer specifically as well, but the CTSA can do multiple functions. It can provide the contracted services as well. We've historically not done that because the TDA portion that they're dedicated has been only 190,000, so you can't do much with that. I think what's in the staff report talks about adding, if we add Ride FACT and Ride FACT Now dollars to that, that's adding to their CTSA responsibilities, and we would amend the contract to include that as their CTSA responsibilities.
So that's not in the scope of the CTSA responsibilities that was approved by the board in 2006 when they bid it out. Okay. So I think it's a good intent, but there are many providers in this space. We heard from several of them today. We had a letter from Elder Help. I think they make the point, all of us in this space deal with special needs and filling gaps. That's very pertinent information. If you're going to dedicate funding, should this be going to one provider without actually bidding it out? Should we be looking at metrics? Our board yesterday had to make a very tough decision to cut some services due to the data and poor performance metrics. That is not encompassed in this. We don't see any of that. How many passengers would they be able to take with the additional $700,000 a year? How much do they pay per passenger compared to, for instance, Jewish Family Services or PACE or any of the other providers, Elder Help, any of the other providers? So there's not a lot here to really tell you all what kind of recommendation you'd want to make. And I think to Councilmember Moreno's point, this is really premature if you're now going to set up a transit operator in the region as a dedicated funding source from the TDA. So that would be my suggestion, is that you have more information before you make any decision.
Member Brett Patel.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for the presentation and to all the speakers. And similar to Councilmember Moreno, you know, I know NCTD and myself have a few concerns, and of course, very, very supportive of FACT. And I know we work really close together with them as an agency. One thing that I do want to highlight is, of course, NCTD also relies on TDA funding and to operate the Lyft paratransit service that we provide. So I know that's very, very critical to vulnerable populations, specifically in North County. And so you know, we also would hope that we could find, I think, Colleen, you put it very well, is that if there's another way to be able to open up more avenues for funding, that would be better than obviously changing any distribution of funding, so that we're continuing to at least have the ability to provide the services that NCTD needs to as well in North County. So thank you.
Any other hands from committee members? Councilman Duncan.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to disclose one thing. We had a former council member from Coronado who spent many, many years working with FACT on their board. And I believe my friend Phil Monroe is entering basically his 90s, and FACT asked me if I would participate in the role that Phil had on their board. And I agreed to do that. I just want to disclose that as a disclosure. There's no salary or anything related to that. So I've been to one meeting since that change happened. But separately from this, if you may recall, you know, when FACT did not receive any funding in the last cycle grant for Ride FACT, and I think there was the initial rankings that came out that had FACT on top, in the top 3 out of whatever it was, 14 or so. And after the outside, you know, readers reviews, FACT dropped out and did not qualify for funding. And at that time, you know, we discussed it here at the Transportation Committee. It went up to the board, was on a consent calendar. We removed it from consent. The board reviewed it and had the same unanimous vote as this Transportation Committee, with the request to staff to please try to find a way to fund FACT, because it's such an essential organization. It came back to the Transportation Committee, our committee here again, and we had another unanimous vote asking for that. So after 3 unanimous votes, you know, this is what staff is coming back to us with potential options. And I appreciate them doing it. It is a difficult thing, as we all know, to try to come up with funding for an entity. I'm not sure if we're allowed to ask questions of Arun. I know this is, you know, a Ride FACT issue, but one of my questions is, you know, what happens to Ride FACT if we don't provide any additional funding? Because we can say that, you know, let's just find more funding. Well, I think staff has diligently worked really hard to try to find more funding, and this is what they've come up with. So as we know, when we review Ride FACT, what they provide is rides anywhere in our county to any of the citizens, whether they live at the border, or they live right here in downtown, or they live in the far reaches of North County or East County. They will give them the ride. And Ride FACT has really worked to do whatever the board has suggested. So when there was another entity coming to the board asking potentially to take some funding out of what had been allocated to FACT, and they had an idea of having on-demand services, saying that's something new we could do. RideFact doesn't do that. RideFact's response was, yes, we'll do that. And now they're doing that, meaning you can call and, say, I need a ride now, and they'll get somebody there as soon as possible, and often within an hour. And that's what we heard from the speakers today. I know that the other services that presented today are really good services. And I'm sure if they had asked their participants to come in and say how valuable they've been, those participants would have come today. But I do think it's important to note that at all of these prior meetings, including today, I'm hearing from the most vulnerable population in our county that are saying, RideFact is doing this for us now, and we depend on that, and we want that, and we need that. So when I come to SANDAG's board and participate in this committee, I'm thinking to myself, what is something that's real and good and immediate that we need to make sure continues to happen in our role as board members, is to ensure that RideFact does not go away. It serves the broadest geographic area. It has the door-to-door service. I recently looked at a new vehicle that RideFact obtained, where it's a Toyota Sienna. They have tension cables in it that attaches to the wheelchair. It pulls that wheelchair directly into the vehicle, locks it in, and they're immediately able to take that person to their medical appointments. And RideFact has a broad spectrum of users, which includes not just the medically disabled, but also seniors that may have other disabilities but aren't necessarily certified as paratransit. And my deep concern is that this goes away. I think it's one of the best things. I'm not, obviously there's grander projects that serve, the average person, but when I look at, we say, hey, let's do youth opportunity passes and just pay for that. Why? It's a good thing. It is. This, though, is an essential thing for these people's lives. If we don't have this service, I don't know how they function. And that's what they tell us when they come here and when they call in. They say things like, my patient will lose an eye if I don't get this ride. This is dialysis treatment is not an optional or a good thing. It's a necessary, essential thing that they have to have. And when you have an organization, I've never heard a user of FACT, think about all the issues that we deal with and all of the controversy we hear on anything that SANDAG does and all the things that infect it from, politics and whatever, various issues. I've never heard a user of FACT come in and say, this isn't meeting my needs. It's not a good service that really works countywide. They all say, we need this essential service. So when, for whatever reason, and I'm not saying staff did anything wrong, our competitive process is wrong, but my point at the time was that having two independent readers knock out the cycle funding for this entity that is so essential is not acceptable. And that is why I was pushing with the board and with this committee and with staff to try to find some alternates. There's never a perfect alternate. A perfect alternate would be, even though I will say in our agenda, if you look at it, and I agree that there are push and pulls with any money that's moved around, as was stated, it does state that due to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, SANDAG's annual 5310 apportionment increased from 2.4 million to 3.5 million. So there is potentially additional funds that aren't necessarily, all cannibalizing completely what another entity would need to use. I know I'm going on for a little while, but Arun, I see you at the table. If it's acceptable to the chair, can you give us any insight as to what happens if you don't receive the funding and what happened after you didn't receive cycle funding last time? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. What happened as a result of Cycle 12 awards was FACT had requested $800,000 for 2 years of Ride Fact service. Those funds were denied. So the funding we received for rides, which would have funded Ride Fact, was zero for Cycle 12. It was a really bizarre, in my view, series of events that unfolded after that. We had applied for Ride Fact Now funding earlier to provide the on-demand service, which is different from Ride Fact. So when Ride Fact ended, Ride Fact has shut down, actually. It's no longer in service because the funds are not there. So when Ride Fact ended in July, we were winding it down because the funding was basically over. We were awarded Ride Fact Now funds starting in June. So it was one of those, hair-raising, last-minute sort of situations where Ride Fact, as it was ending, just 30 days before that, we were given the go-ahead to start expending Ride Fact Now funds, which we had also applied for competitively and were awarded by SANDAG. So Ride Fact Now officially no longer, Ride Fact doesn't exist today. There's only Ride Fact Now that's available. It comes at a higher cost. Since then, in another development, when a grantee defaulted on their Cycle 12 award for Ride Fact, that funding was transferred to FACT. That was $343,000. So that's less than 1 year of Ride Fact funding that we had requested for. And I appreciate that SANDAG was considerate and offered that funding to FACT. So that contract will be effective sometime, I believe, early next year.
Mayor Krantz.
Oh, and before we move on, Chair Shu, if I could do just one small housekeeping item, because that's what the lawyers do. I just wanted to ask Councilmember Duncan a quick question. You said you're not salaried by FACT, right? Is there any other compensation that you receive from FACT? Because we just need to note that in the record to dot our I's and cross our T's.
Thank you. I believe FACT, similar to our agencies, has a stipend of $100 a meeting for its board members. I'm more than happy to donate that back to charity. As I mentioned, I've been to one board meeting, which I think qualifies for that one stipend.
Yeah, thanks for that. We'll just reflect that in the minutes to comply with our policies and
Thank you,
government
Council.
code. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Krantz.
Yes, thank you. And I did have the opportunity to serve on the FACT board. Never got a nickel from them, but came away with great admiration for the work that they were doing. Was subsequently elected to the city council in Encinitas and was very happy to have been appointed to represent the city of Encinitas on the North County Transit District Board. And I served there for 10 years. One of the reasons why I was very interested in serving on that board is because I am a big believer in public transit, and particularly to those people who are transit dependent. And what we're talking about when we consider this issue of Ride Fact and the services that FACT provides is we are dealing with a subset of transit dependent people that are otherwise really in dire straits when it comes to getting around. I have a constituent who is blind and diabetic and in need of dialysis. And so he has a significant dependence upon public transit. When North County Transit District was in a position of needing to make adjustments to our paratransit services, it had a significant impact on his ability to get rides to where he needed to go in a cost-effective way. He is a big fan of FACT and the work that they did. So as I look at this from a policy perspective, I didn't really want to know all the details that we got in our memo. I mean, I appreciate it's complicated. The acronyms and the funding sources and all of the stuff that goes into, providing this service is challenging. And, but most important to me is making sure that we have the ability to provide the service. And between NCTD and MTS, there are some gaps. And so these gaps are being filled by some private sector organizations, some nonprofit agencies that are doing really critical work. So like one of the public speakers mentioned, there was a hope in my heart that we could find some money under a rock to make sure that we provided as much service as possible. I obviously knew that we weren't going to find it under a rock, but maybe in some account somewhere that we could take care of this. But one of the last things I want to do is rob from Peter to pay Paul. And, I don't want to be unfair, but in the end, this all came about because I looked at a spreadsheet that indicated that in this grant funding process, a very important service was kind of left out. So I don't feel that we have enough information here. I think it's important that we make informed decisions as a body. And so like Councilmember Moreno, I think that we do need to dive a little deeper into this. Obviously, if there was going to be a change to TDA funding, we would want to know how that was going to affect the two transit agencies. That's not my preferred option. The other question would be, could FACT come up with a 20% match if necessary? There are just still a number of questions that, for me, it's difficult to make a recommendation to the full SANDAG board based upon what we have before us today. But ultimately, my commitment to those folks who make use of these services is quite high, and I'm very interested in finding a way. So I will look to my colleagues here on the board to come up with some ideas about how we might do that.
Any other comments or questions? I have just a few comments before we want to possibly take any action. I agree with many of you that, or maybe all of you, that we need additional information. And I would go even further. Besides numbers of rides and costs, so we have a ride per cost factor. To me, there's so many other issues, the quality of the service and the populations we're serving and who are not serving. So if a person has a particular kind of disability, are we giving them the same opportunities to get rides? And to me, I don't know if we have any real data to that. Quite often, I'll see satisfaction reports. The people you serve are very satisfied. That's great. And that should be good. But who you don't hear from is those that never came to you, that you didn't serve at all. And to me, that's a huge number that we don't have very much data on at all. So we don't know if there's someone in some part of the county that, whether they know about these services or not, are simply not receiving them because no one's providing them. So we don't know that number. So I don't know how we can get the number. That may be a huge study that Jenny is going to have to find very creative funding to study that. But to me, these are some bigger questions that we have to know. And by all indications, all the services that are being made available, the providers are doing some good, whether it's MTS, North Coast Transit, the other nonprofit providers all have some great stories and important numbers. So I think that's very important. The other thing that I want to look forward to is, we're supposed to be looking forward in what we want in our future. That's what SANDAG did, or ours way before I came on this board did, with regards to having on-demand services. So luckily we have this kind of experiment just started this year. And how is that going? What does that look like? And how can we improve that as we go into the future? So to me, that's important. Having a CTSA that is effective and can help all specialized needs, transportation needs in our region, to me is also important. I don't know if that's going to be the job of SANDAG is through its distribution of grant funds or the CSTA itself. I also want to bring up the issue of the workers, whether it be drivers, taxi drivers, they need to have a play in all of this so that we are sure that those who provide the services are given adequate wages, training, resources to provide these services. To me, this is a huge amount of unknowns as we go forward. So I hope we can take all this to task. The good news, because I checked with Jenny early this week, we have a little time, not a lot, but we have a little time before we make any final decision. And if we do make a change, there may be a rule change or something that's needed before the next cycle. So there's a little time before we make any policy decisions, either this month or next month, and still time for it to go before the full SANDAG board. So if we do make a rule change, for example, on one of the programs, it'll have to go back to the full SANDAG board. And when we do, I hope we have the background information so that the full board approves it without much discussion. So that's my input. I'm ready for any further discussion, and Councilman Moreno's hand went up half a second before.
Thank you. I'm happy to make a motion to have staff work with FACT, NCTD, and MTS to develop a proposal to fund FACT and to bring that complete proposal back to the Transportation Committee in a future date.
And so we have a motion, Councilman Duncan.
Preliminary comment, then if I can respond to the motion. So I have full and complete respect for every comment that was made today from all of the members here and the other parties and providers as well. I just thought that while we are together and we're reviewing this, if I may make a brief comment on some of the options, because we haven't really discussed any of the options, and I understand that it's difficult to do so without knowing all the consequences, et cetera. But I just want to give a couple of preliminary comments to think about, and maybe this is something that staff can also help respond to, at least potentially my questions when they look at it. So in regard to the first option, the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 program, I do believe that it would be appropriate, and it is not necessarily that difficult to award some sustaining funds to FACT out of that area. And I would obviously want to know the consequences, but I don't think those consequences necessarily would have a direct or major impact on the other providers that spoke today. I think that is one possible solution. And when I say that, I acknowledge the issue that arises, which is the 20% matching funds, and how do we, resolve that issue. But looking at things analytically, step by step, I think that is awarding funds under number one option, the 5310 program, would be a major step forward in solving what I believe we all recognize as a problem of potentially having RIDE-FACT disappear, or RIDE-FACT now. As to the second option, I think that's an option that may have more impact on those other providers that spoke today, or at least their call for keeping a competitive cycle process. And my belief is that that probably is a fair request, and not to bar RIDE-FACT from applying under that program, but not to necessarily award any dedicated funds out of it and keep that program running the way it has been running. And then under number 3, the Access for All grant program, I think that is potentially where maybe more information that's been requested from the other members would be more appropriate to help us make an informed decision, so that when we make a recommendation to the board, they'll be able to analyze what effects might come from whether or not any dedicated funds come out of there that could be used as matching funds. And Brian, yeah, if you can clarify if I'm misstating.
I think you meant TDA on that one, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, TDA,
not
thank you.
AFA, right?
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that, yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And so that's where, if you could help guide us on whether, and maybe speak to the agencies more as well and find information that may help guide us in a recommendation to the board. And obviously, as mentioned by Chair, that this will be up to the board to ultimately decide what to do. But, and I'm not sure, Chair, our next meeting, or if this, did you have a recommendation of like maybe by our December meeting, if that would be a goal, if we could have that so we could not get too far away from what we're trying to do and to maybe ensure we can meet the timelines that are coming up?
It's soon, but December 3rd meeting would be the one that would have time for. But we do have a motion that was made by Councilman Moreno.
And I'll second the motion.
You can second motion. And I don't know if all of what you just said prior to needs to be worded into the motion itself, if the staff understood what.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that wasn't my intent. I just thought it would be remiss if I didn't set forth at least some thoughts on what I felt we were looking at and maybe what we've had, would hopefully give staff some help in regard to the motion. But I would second the motion and let it stand as stated unless there's an addition.
My motion said exactly that.
That's why I seconded it without change.
Excellent. Any other discussion? So we have a motion by Councilmember Moreno and seconded by Councilmember Duncan.
Hi. Oh, I'm sorry. So used to spelling.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next item, which is item 8. Nikki from Caltrans will be kicking off the item on the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project. And just to note, this item would take some action from the board, but let's share the presentation.
Good morning. The State Route 11 Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project has been under development for several years now, and we have reached the point where we need to consider the different construction delivery methods for the border crossing facility itself. We are here to present to you our analysis, our findings, and recommendations. To my right here is Maria Rodriguez Molina of SANDAG. She is the Deputy Corridor Director of this project. And to the right of Maria is Ali DeVoe. Ali is the Design Manager of the border crossing facilities. Can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so we will start with an overall update of the project. Maria and I will do that, and then Ali will proceed with the construction delivery methods, analysis, findings, and recommendations. So what you have in front of you here is a diagram of the project, this $1.2 billion project. It includes the roadway and freeway infrastructures. All of the roadways and freeways have been completed, included the 125 southbound to westbound 905. It also includes the completion of the 125 southbound into eastbound 905 that takes you directly to the existing Otay Mesa Port of Entry. We've already completed the State Route 11, 2.1 miles of that gives you access to the future Otay Mesa East facility. We are now focused on the design and construction of these facilities, including the federal facility, the state facility, and all of the ITS components that fully integrates this as one system. So just to remind you the benefits of this port of entry facility, it will allow us to achieve the goal of our net zero emissions by year 2035. It includes integrated intelligent transportation system, operation system. Will also include advanced traveler information system that covers any weather conditions, traffic conditions. We'll also have dedicated approach roads. Also includes operational innovations and security technology. And it will have congestion pricing to maintain an average 20-minute wait time. So what we're currently doing right now at this project, we're mass grading this 120-acre facility. Also includes the placement of the new utilities into the perimeter of the project. We are also working on the design of these facilities. In the meantime, we're also working on the different agreements of the grant fundings that we have received to allocate the $290 million of TCEP and infra funds. We're also working on our binational ITS design. Also, the agreements between us, the sponsors, GSA, and CBP. We also have the agreements on the operations and maintenance with Mexico, and also the toll governance with Mexico. We're also finalizing a financial strategy to fully fund this project. So as you can see, we are very busy doing different things to keep this project forward. And I'm going to pass this on to Maria to talk about next steps.
Thank you. So recently, Assembly Bill 427 was signed, and it allows SANDAG to utilize construction manager general contractor methodology. And for sure, we're going to call it CMGC today. In order for SANDAG to do that, SANDAG must first compare the proposed CMGC delivery method to the traditional design bid build in a public meeting and adopt written findings that demonstrate the use of CMGC will accomplish at least one of the following objectives. 1, reduce comparable project cost, or 2, expedite the project's completion, or 3, provide features not achievable through the traditional design bid project. So today, that's what we're going to be walking through, and Ali will give us all of the details that support the study and the analysis with the recommendation. If contingent on today's recommendation and approval next week by the board, our intent is to move forward early next year in 2024 with the advertisement of the CMGC contract. Soon after that, we would advertise a CM contract, that's the inspection contract. About the same time, we'll be able to complete the 30% design. And then the goal is to do design and construction in parallel to advance the project in an expedite manner with an open to traffic by 2026. All of this schedule is contingent on a federal agreement that we need to sign with Customs and Border Protection and General Service Administration. Now, Ali will walk us through the study.
Thank you, Maria. All right. So as Nikki and Maria mentioned, we're deep in the design phase of the project right now. And as we're in this phase, it's important to stop and take a look at how we're going to deliver this project at best throughout the course of the project. So the project team undertook a delivery method alternative analysis to really take a look at all the opportunities that are out there, all the delivery methods that we currently use, some we may not have used before, and really determine the opportunities and constraints of each, really focusing on the ability to meet the project's aggressive schedule, improve cost certainty, and reduce risk. So I'm going to provide an overview of the results of this analysis, and I'm going to start with a deeper dive into the 4 different delivery methods we really looked at, with just an overview of what that delivery method encompasses, and then the opportunities and constraints of each. So starting with the construction manager general contractor delivering method, or CMGC. In this delivery method, we bring the contractor on very early in the process to work with us throughout the design phase. They're able to provide constructability services and have a seat at the table with the design team throughout the design phase. It is a best value delivery method where the contractor is selected based on qualifications and costs are negotiated and agreed to by all parties, called an agreed to price is the goal to get to with, for our construction pricing. So some of the opportunities this provides is it provides some flexibility. Not all of our funding is required at that first procurement phase. So we're able to go and procure the contractor based on qualifications without having a large upfront cost of bringing that contractor on board. Again, it allows us to overlap those design and construction phases and get that contractor input throughout the design phase. It also allows us to price the project. And when we have that agreed to pricing phase with the contractor, it's at a higher level of design. So the plan is to go out and get the contractor based on qualifications when we're at about a 30% design level, but they won't have to price the work until later on once the design is more developed. And so this also provides flexibility for phasing project elements to match funding availability. We can segment the work and look at it into work packages or supplements and phase certain elements of the work first as we reach a further level of design. So that allows us to really accelerate that schedule by overlapping those phases. We do have some constraints here. The owner does have to negotiate the construction costs with one entity. So there is some risk there that negotiation period gets extended and can impact the overall project schedule. And the owner does have to manage that interface between the contractor and the designer. They're not under one umbrella of a contract. You're working with both concurrently but independently. The next method I will talk about is the design build delivery method. This is a common delivery method used especially with vertical or building construction. In this delivery method, the design and construction are completed in a single phase by a design build contractor. So it integrates design and construction into one contract. Design build contractor is selected both on qualifications and pricing, but that pricing occurs at a much earlier stage of design, around the 30% level. So it creates the opportunities in the sense that it integrates design and construction into one contract and accelerates the delivery by overlapping some of the activities. Allows for a head start on long lead time items, but the constraints are really multiple. All the funding is required at the start of the project. So when we go and procure that design build contractor, we need to fund the entire construction phase at that time. So it requires development of a design to a 30% level before we go out and procure that contractor, but we're also pricing that design at a 30% level. So there's a lot of risk of overruns because there's not as much detail in a 30% design as if we are completed with our final design. So this creates a greater risk of increased cost and a longer schedule duration. Additionally, in particular, the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project has an extensive list of agencies that we have to coordinate with, especially federal agencies, and their review processes with the design build contract would even further extend that schedule. We'd have to go through multiple agency review processes rather than having them run concurrently through design. The next delivery method we looked at was progressive design build. And so this is similar to design build in the sense where both design and construction are procured under one contract as a single design builder. However, selections are based on qualifications and then the construction cost component is negotiated later on in the process. So that has the similarities to CMGC. So it's kind of a hybrid of those first two I talked about. It has similar opportunities as CMGC. It reduces the upfront funding need. It also allows for concurrent project development with the contractor input. And we don't get to that pricing until design is at a higher level. So that also reduces the risk. And we do have the flexibility under this method to phase project elements like we do with CMGC. However, the biggest risk, the constraints are similar to CMGC. The biggest constraint is that we have not used this delivery method before. SANDAG has not used this delivery method before. We'd have to start from scratch in terms of developing contract documents, best practices, compared to CMGC, which we have utilized successfully on the Mid-Coast project in conjunction with Caltrans on the North Coast Corridor project as well. There's a lot of risk there compared to CMGC. And finally, the last method we looked at is design bid build. And so this is traditionally the delivery method we use for most SANDAG projects. You develop your design to 100% final design level, and then you put the project out to be competitively bid by contractors. This requires less contingency in bids and provides competitive pricing for construction. And also funding is required sequentially. So we have a little bit more time before construction funding needs to be secured. The constraints here is that the owner retains a lot of risk. The owner retains the risk for changes to the design after the contractor is on board. And we retain the risk for integrating design and construction and with all this federal agency input as well. And so any changes that happen after we bid it out are much more costly. It also has the longest schedule with a potential to extend due to potential change order work. So we have to complete the entire design before we start construction, which really extends the entire project schedule. It also limits innovation. We cannot involve the contractor early on in the process. We're working with the contractor once the design is finalized. So we really don't have the opportunity to work together to come up with ideas and innovations. So these next few slides, I'm going to talk about why we want to use CMGC and why we're asking for the recommendation to adopt a resolution to allow the project to utilize CMGC. And first, this is the schedule comparison. You've heard me mention a few times how the ability to accelerate the schedule is really one of those key elements to why we want to use the CMGC delivery method. So you can see with this graphic that it overlaps that design, negotiation, and construction phase to really shorten that overall schedule. Compared to the other delivery methods, we're shortening the schedule by over a year. And I touched on a lot of things we looked at today, but I just want to touch on that the analysis we undertook included many factors. We looked at many in depth. You can read the report is attached to the staff report, the entire complete delivery analysis. But in short, CMGC was the top delivery method in terms of our analysis. It did score the highest. So to wrap up, I just wanted to go a little bit more in depth on the benefits of CMGC for the Otay Mesa Port of Entry project. So first is if it's qualification-based selection, we're able to bring on a contractor that has land port of entry experience. So we can download that experience during our design. We can collaborate with them. We can increase innovation. We can increase efficiency and tackle some of those issues while we work through the design. It greatly reduces risk in several areas. We have less risk of delays and cost increases during construction as it is a collaborative process, and we're working together to identify those risks throughout the design process. Another item is collaboration. As I mentioned, stakeholders. We have many stakeholders involved in this project, and this allows us to get everyone in the room working together from that 30% design level on. So we're really all able to collaborate with the federal agencies, with the contractor, with the design team, with SANDAG, with all the local and state jurisdictions that we need to coordinate with. We're all in the room together working on the design, identifying those risks collaboratively. It increases our cost certainty as we're able to address those risks as they're identified during the design phase before we agree to a price. And it accelerates our schedule greatly. It aligns the goals of SANDAG and the contractor to overlap design and construction and deliver the project on time and in budget. And finally, improve constructability. Having that contractor on board from the beginning really allows you to get that download from them in terms of what you're proposing is constructible and efficient, and they can provide better opportunities and better ways to accomplish the same goals that you're working towards. So in conclusion, why we are asking for the recommendation of the Transportation Committee today is that we found that the CMGC delivery method provides the ability to accelerate the project schedule, improve cost certainty, and reduce risk over the traditional design bid build delivery method, concurrent with findings in attachment 1 to the staff report. And the CMGC delivery method reduced risk in comparison with the progressive design build delivery method. And the CMGC delivery method accelerates the schedule and improves cost certainty over the design build delivery method. And that concludes our presentation. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, Maria, and Nikki. Do we have any public comments, Francesca?
Chair, we do have 2 public comments. Blair Beekman will be first, followed by the original draw.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. I come from a place more of public transportation and where the trolley issues going into Tijuana in the future of concern. But this is a very interesting item as well. I can't thank you enough for the work that you guys do at SANDAG to help create good relationships around the border. It's incredibly impressive. With public transportation, you know, and with this issue too, there will be a lot of technology involved. It's easier to say with public transportation that, you know, we have to be mindful. There's going to be a lot of new biometric camera use that's going to be made available that we have to be ready for. And that's when I say we have to be ready to have those conversations openly in public meeting spaces and with the public. I think that's important to work on, and that we don't have to fear that subject matter. And hopefully I'm making it a way it can eventually be softer, that we just can simply talk about this stuff openly, because we're going to have to. And so good luck how you can. Biometric cameras will be a part of this traffic issues at the border, and to learn to practice these things openly and to create good policies, I think does something amazing for what we're trying to build and what you already do try to work on at SANDAG and the border issues. And that, in fact, can really help at this time. I hope, you know, with the war situations going on in Israel and Ukraine right now, we don't get more and more war-minded here in this country. And SANDAG with its border issues has helped make it a safer process and journey for all of us. Thank you immensely for that. I don't think we have to fear the border issues as much because of that, basically. So continue the good work and see what peace and dialogue and negotiation does for ourselves. It creates good feelings and good practices. So good luck in our efforts. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is the original draw. You can go ahead.
Man, it's crazy because we're sitting here doing this stuff that's going to benefit Mexico. The people of the United States of America seem to be the ones to just help Mexico benefit when we're suffering from an invasion of the border that nobody seems to want to recognize in times like this. It's like when it affects MTS and, you know, they drop off 350 of them at one time and, you know, we're giving them free rides. Well, you know, we can't even do that for our own people or provide them for housing or bathrooms. And as soon as they come, boom, they get a bathroom. And it's like Mexico isn't stopping that from happening. We're the ones that have to like make up for this invasion and pay for it. And then when Tijuana is sitting there, you know, releasing sewage into the ocean, and then it comes up to us, and then we got to pay for it and deal with it and call emergencies. And yet we still do business with Mexico. It's like, of course, you want to make the transportation easier, but at the same time, we're not recognizing that the people that you're doing business with are negating and neglecting and intentionally not doing anything about it. And why would they if we continue to like help them benefit from so many things? It's like, why would they stop cleaning it up if we're going to clean it up? Why would they pay for any of this stuff if we're going to pay for it? Right? Why would they want to help stop the border stuff if they're trying to get them out of their country and let them come into ours? It makes no sense. It's like up is down, right? You know, right is wrong. I mean, and we can't even acknowledge these things because you like put blinders on for certain things, as long as it's like, you know, somehow going to bring you some kind of benefit. But we're the ones that are having to pay for all of this. And all this net zero stuff is a bunch of lies. So I don't know. We need to acknowledge the invasion of the border that's happening and do something about that before we do this business.
That concludes the public comment.
Thank you, Francisca. Any comments or questions from committee members on this item? Moreno. Well, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That's Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation. I love to have my Otay Mesa moments. And so the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project, I think, is absolutely critical to facilitate the traffic and trade generated by our growing binational economy. Just for folks, for reference, we have $50 billion of commerce that's currently crossing through Otay Mesa. If we are serious about nearshoring and being competitive with China, then we absolutely need to get behind Otay Mesa to which I am very much behind and very supportive, although it sits just outside of my jurisdiction. But I think staff's choice of the construction management general contractor method of project delivery is a prudent choice that's suited for a project of this size, complexity, and also urgency. One note that I will state though is I think it would be great for this presentation to be seen by Borders Committee because Borders Committee has been very much up to speed on everything that has to do with Otay Mesa 2. I don't want to add that to my motion, but I will make a strong nudge. And I'm happy to move staff's recommendation on this item. Thank you for the great presentation.
Motion.
Second.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the presentation and Councilmember Moreno clarifying just how important the economic relationship is with Mexico, and in particular Tijuana. I always struggle with our Constitution and our First Amendment rights and the way we run our meetings, and we allow people to speak and say things that are offensive. I would really love if we had a functional federal government that could address immigration issues, but I think it's important to note that the folks that are presenting themselves for asylum at the border come from a number of Central American countries. But yeah, nothing out of the federal government. Got a group of people that just refuse to address issues of immigration that are fair and acknowledge the important relationship between Mexico and Central America and our country. So really, really difficult to sit through some of this. In the meantime, I support getting Otay Mesa East open as quickly as possible, and we'll be supporting the motion.
Any other comments, Councilman Duncan?
Thank you. I appreciate the fellow members' comments and support them completely. I just wanted to take one moment to mention that when we have an issue like this, it deals with the 50 billion plus in commerce between Mexico and the United States at the border. I do wish and certainly hope that both the Mexican government, which has committed, and I was just down there with the San Diego Chamber of Commerce a couple of weeks ago, and we appreciate their assurances, but more so speaking to our federal government, that they would allocate the $1 billion that's necessary to fix the environmental and health crisis of the transborder sewage at our border, which actually directly affects the health of probably the most vulnerable people in Mexico and in the South San Diego region. But I support the motion. Thank you.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank Nikki, Maria, and Ali for the presentation. I wholeheartedly agree that CMGC is the right method of delivery for this project, and I want to thank them for not just jumping at recommending it, but actually doing a thorough analysis of all the methods that could be used and reinforcing with data that this is the best method overall. Like Ali mentioned, we're not strangers at Caltrans or SANDAG for delivering projects via this method. The Mid-Coast Corridor was delivered as a CMGC project, and the North Coast Corridor was delivered as a CMGC project. So we have some good examples of very complicated projects having success with this method, and I have no doubt that so will Otay Mesa East. Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry, Gustavo Galarda, for not pronouncing your name correctly. You only have a few more meetings left with us. You're retiring soon.
I am, and it's with mixed feelings after 32 years with the Department of Transportation, serving the people of San Diego and Imperial County. But I've enjoyed a great career supported by many talented staff like Nikki and Maria and so not just at Caltrans, but also across other agencies and our planning director who supported me in a lot of these meetings. I'm going to miss all of you. And I really thank you for all your support during these years and for the great things that you're all doing for the people of our county.
Yeah, thank you. And before we take a vote, I am hopeful that we finish the work on this side of the border, hopefully as fast as they're doing on the Mexican side, so we can open this port of entry up as planned very soon. Any other comments? If not, we can go ahead and vote.
That item passes unanimously with those members present.
Okay, I think that concludes our meeting. Our next meeting is the 17th, is that correct, of November? For the Transportation Committee. Other than that, I can declare adjournment.